There's a great quote about wealth that I've always remembered, and it goes, "Some people are so poor that all they have is money." Now, in my 20s and a good chunk of my 30s, I often conflated wealth with money. That wealth meant that you had amassed stocks, real estate, things that you could buy. But now that I'm in my 40s, I've begun to realize that true wealth is measured in the things that you cannot buy. You might be thinking that I'm about to talk about time, and sure, you can't buy time, and it's our most valuable resource. But time to do what? If you wish that you had more time or could go back in time so that you could make more money, then you're kind of missing the point. I would argue that the most important thing that you could do with the time that you have is to invest in relationships with your spouse, kids, parents, extended family, and friends. Do you know how many billions of people wish that they had one more moment with someone that they loved? And not just someone who died, but with someone who is still alive. Someone with whom they lost touch, or someone from whom they are estranged. Which brings me to the story of two lawyers. My first job out of college was working as a paralegal at a law firm in Washington, D.C. Out of the dozens of lawyers at the firm, two stood out to me the most. One was an ambitious young lawyer who had built a reputation around the firm for billing thousands and thousands of billable hours each year and clearly gunning to become a partner at the law firm. He would often take other partners out for lunch, probably in an attempt to ingratiate himself with them. One day, I remember receiving a firm-wide email congratulating this attorney for making partner. He replied all to the email with a short note, thanking everyone, of course, but then he ended the email with a statement that I never forgot. He said that he was finally looking forward to spending time with his kids. Now, given that it was a law firm, I'm sure that for those who read the email, this was just a bit of dark humor and that, hey, that's the price you pay for success. But I remember sitting in my office, staring at that email, and feeling in my gut that there was something fundamentally wrong with what I just read. At the time, I didn't have the experiential vocabulary to articulate what I was feeling. I was only, 22? But thinking back on it now, if I could put words to what I was feeling, it would be something like this. Did this person just admit out loud that he had sacrificed years of quality time with his kids for his career? And it made me then wonder, what kind of culture allows for a statement like this to be accepted or even joked about in the pursuit of what this profession deems as success? Now that I'm a dad myself, I think about that email a lot. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but for those of you who don't have kids, let me be one of the many parents who will say to you that having kids is the greatest and hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. And kids don't stay kids forever. The best thing that you can do for them and for yourself is to spend as much time with them as possible while they are young, especially during the critical years of their life right after birth. Ignore the idiots out there, including doctors, who say that infants don't remember anything from their early years. Infants are smart, and their brains are making untold numbers of connections during those initial months and years about what the world is like, about what the people around them are like. These are the years where babies become securely attached, and your job as a parent is to ensure that they become securely attached by attuning to their needs, being a sturdy presence in their daily life. That's how kids become resilient, aware, independent. You don't build independence by launching a baby prematurely because you're afraid that you're going to coddle them. They need a secure base from which to launch. And even though my daughter is still young, my wife and I see the differences between our child and children who are not raised by their parents, usually because both parents are working and the kid is raised in daycare. No amount of money will ever replace the years you missed with your kids. Nobody on their deathbed says, "I wish I spent less time with my kids." Which brings me to the second attorney. This man was older than the first attorney, and from the perspective of age and experience, he should have been a partner by now. He had all the credentials, went to Princeton for undergrad and then Harvard Law School, but every day I saw this man arrive in the morning when he was supposed to come in and leave when it was time to leave. I never saw him stay late, which I and the other paralegals did on more than one occasion, and oftentimes I would see his daughter come to his office after school, and they would leave together to go home. At the time, it was a bit perplexing, especially when we were working on big cases with upcoming deadlines and it was all hands on deck, working past midnight and then having to come in early the next day or work on weekends. Because even then, he would come in the morning and leave when it was time to leave. And I'm sure it was perplexing to some of the other young associates at the firm, who all probably had the long-term goal of making partner as well. To them, it probably felt like his priorities were misplaced. I myself would think, is this guy not a team player? But I remember talking with an associate that I worked closely with. We started talking about this attorney, and he said something short, very small, that I also never forgot. He said, "I really respect that guy. I now completely understand why. Contrary to what I and perhaps others felt at the time, this attorney had his priorities straight. He had boundaries. He knew there was a time for work and there was a time for life, for family. He understood that the better title, the bigger paycheck, the potential equity was nothing compared to the time it would take away from the things that matter most, things that money can't buy." I actually looked him up recently, and he's still listed as counsel, not a partner, almost 20 years later. A junior associate might look at this attorney's resume and the partner's resume and judge that the partner is the more successful one, the wealthier one, but I would firmly disagree. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not naive about the nature of money, how it's a reality of our daily lives, how it's necessary to live, especially as someone who's the sole earner in our household. But I'm also recognizing how money, wealth, power, and success can blind us to what is truly important in this life. After all, can money buy integrity, health, character, a good marriage, children who remember you being around? If you've watched some of my previous videos, or even know me in real life, you might be surprised to learn that I'm actually a huge nerd when it comes to money. I had to be. I'll talk more about this in a future video, but I was constantly thinking about money in my 20s because I was helping my family pay off debt in the wake of the Great Recession. And in my 30s, I was constantly thinking about making more money and growing my money to make up for lost time. I've learned a lot about how money works, and my future videos will be more focused on personal finance, especially what to do in your 20s and 30s. But before I make those videos, I first wanted to make this video as a reminder of money's proper place in life. The Bible is often misquoted as saying money is the root of all evil, when in fact it says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Money is a tool, but it is also the greatest temptation people face. The temptation in believing that money equals security, that success determines your worth, that your net worth determines your value, and sadly, this mentality is common even within the church. So I'm excited for this new phase of my channel, and I hope you'll join me in my future videos. But remember, some people are so poor that all they have is money.